Oh, the fix for that is just don't have any comebacks. Just fix it right the first time.
Change it. You can always pull the dealership vocabulary and just leave yourself a loophole for everything, and then nothing is a comeback.
To determine where your coolant leak is coming from, we're going to have to do tires and brakes.
Yes, and then from there we'll have to retest and check and see.
The following program features a bunch of doofuses talking about the automotive aftermarket. The stuff we or our guests may say do not necessarily reflect the beliefs of our peers, our sponsors, or any other associations we may have. There may be some spicy language in this show, so if you get your feelings hurt easily, you should probably just move along. So without further ado, it's time for Confessions of a Shop Owner with your host, Mike Allen.
What's up, Buttercup?
I wish I had a good reply back to that, but I don't.
Well, you're wearing that super cute pink shirt right there, so I thought that I should just come over the top rope with the sweetness.
Yeah, well, a long time ago, my grandfather told me, if you don't feel good, look good. And so I woke up this morning and I watched the news and I said, man, it's 48 degrees outside. And we're in May now. So I was like, I need to put something on that at least makes me feel like it's going to be nice outside when I go out. So
it's pretty nice
I
right
put
now.
on my beautiful
out there right
beach shirt,
Yeah. Is that a Vineyard Vines? What is that? Is that a whale?
That is a Vineyard Vines. Yeah.
Okay. You've always been kind of a bougie bitch. So
it's more of my wife. I have not picked out any clothes for myself in the last 12 years. The ones that I have are buried in a separate closet because they're not good enough to be in my main closet.
Well, you know what? Life goals. I just want to have two closets.
You just want to have two closets.
My wife does mock me because I actually own more pairs of shoes than she does.
Right.
And it's not because I've got a lot of shoes. It's just that she is not a shoe person. She's got like Crocs and Danskos for work and some sandals and like the bare minimum of heels and a pair of sneakers, and that's it. So,
well, my problem is I don't throw things away. So I still have like the same pair of sneakers from like 10 years ago.
We did an entire truckload of stuff to With Love from Jesus. And, Amanda had to wash and fold and sort by size and label and bag separately with labels and all that kind of stuff. But we did do a massive closet clean out across the house for the kids and us as well. Little spring cleaning. So hopefully that'll be a benefit. But anyway, yeah. I don't think anybody wants to hear about the condition of my closet. For those of you that don't know, I'm talking today with Matt Lofton. He is the director of coaching with Elite Worldwide, and he is my one-on-one business coach for my Hillsborough Street location. This is coaching call number 5, and this is a window into what it's like to have a one-on-one coach with Elite Worldwide. And if this is the first one you've listened to, I would encourage you to go back and start with coaching call number 1. That's how they're labeled in the podcast catalog. So just find coaching call number 1, start from there. You'll learn about my business and the progression that we've had over the last 4 months as we go through this year-long process of a monthly coaching call and trying to get the hot mess that is my business straightened out. And to be clear, anything in my business that is a hot mess is 100% on me and not on my guys. I am definitely the restrictor plate on that high performance motor, no doubt. So,
we imagine a world where the customer experience is seamless for auto repair. Where every interaction is effortless.
Hey Jen, Sam here. How can I help you?
Hi Sam, I just had a warning light pop up and I think
every detail is anticipated.
Around now.
Yeah, it looks like last time you were in we said there was something that we could possibly need to address with your spark plugs. So let's get you in here and make sure everything's good before you go on your launch.
And every customer feels valued.
You'll be getting a text alert shortly. We're going to send Jerry over the car. You'll be able to swap cars with him so you have a loaner for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
This is the future with TechMetric. A fully connected system designed to redefine how auto repair shops operate and deliver excellence. From streamlined appointment scheduling to real-time updates, TechMetric empowers shops to work smarter, With integrated payments, transparent pricing, and instant
Again, actually, it
communication,
was just as we thought. Definitely going to need to replace the spark plug.
customers stay informed and in control at every
Charge,
step.
and we should have that car back to you in a couple hours.
Sounds great.
In TechMetric shops, decisions are powered by data. Owners can track progress in real time. Technicians have the tools to succeed, and service writers focused on what matters most. Building trust with customers. It's not just a repair, it's an experience. A seamless, efficient, and customer-first journey that keeps people coming back.
Sure everything was to your satisfaction.
Fantastic.
Good to hear.
With TechMetric, every moment matters. Every interaction counts.
Look, here's the deal. I like to think that I'm pretty good at running an auto repair shop. It's what I've done for 20 plus years, but I'm not good at managing a marketing budget and all the different facets of a truly well-rounded marketing plan. There's mail, there's local advertising, there's website, there's Google AdWords, there's all the different things that go into that, and it's just not what I'm good at. So what I've chosen to do is to buy myself the time to focus on what I am good at while having someone else execute on all of those things at a way higher level than anything I could ever do. That's what turnkey auto marketing does for me. So if you feel like you could use some of that same magic, I'm going to recommend that you go to turnkeyautomarketing.com, get a free consultation, tell them that I sent you, tell them that Confessions of a Shop Owner sent you. You won't be disappointed. Here we are. Let's talk about April, our best month ever at Carfix Hillsborough Street. The team really seemed to hit their stride. We had good car count because school's in session and we're coming into summer and it's travel season, all those things that feed into typically good months. Got a great team up front. We've got 3 technicians in the back that we have confidence in all 3 of them. And it's just kind of time to hit the ground running, and they certainly did that. So what do you want to talk about, sir?
Yeah, well, first off, congratulations on April. So kind of where I was going to start, we like to celebrate wins with our clients. So we've gone through the first quarter together, and our reporting averages for the first quarter, we were averaging $21,300 weekly sales in Q1. April, which is our first month there of Q2, and for the first week, we're averaging $30,846 in sales. So that's a massive improvement there. So congratulations. I know that, some of that's we're getting the store staffed and kind of getting everybody up to speed on the processes there, but there's just some pretty big W's to celebrate. Our hours per RO went from 2.4 to 3.1. So those are, that's a pretty big improvement right there. And then probably the biggest improvement that you have had has been in the discovered services category, and we're up about $600. So from $1,600 of average discovered services in Q1 to $2,300 of discovered services in Q2. So that's pretty massive there. And obviously that's correlated into an improvement in our average repair order size as well. So our average repair order from Q1 went from $628 all the way up to a whopping $807 in April. So those are all massive victories.
Move in the right direction.
Definitely in the right direction. And that's worth a pizza party for the guys, and
one
pat
topping
on the back.
Little Caesars, one topping only.
one Little Caesars, cheese only. Pay extra for your own toppings.
There are 5 of you here. There are 8 slices on the pizza. We don't need 2 pizzas. You're good. So I would say that there's some technology that played into that, but mostly it's the people. We have started using Detect Auto to good effect. To you can kind of customize it to what your DVI standards are and your maintenance recommendation schedule is. And then it will review your local history and Carfax service history And since all three of our stores are integrated with Carfax, it's effectively searching all three stores' history and Carfax, and compare that with your maintenance schedule and automatically recommend those things. So that is helping to build out the DVI with maintenance recommendations that maybe we weren't as effective on. And then we started using HubShop solutions, which I think we've talked about for estimating.
Yep.
And they're turning estimates quickly, and they're building out everything, right, that we see. And so those are the two pieces of technology. But then Blaine, who is our senior technician over both Raleigh locations, has moved his base of operations over to that store. And as he goes, so goes average written repair order. He's just really on top of that and a really good leader by example there. And then, Steven has been on top of it as well. And John, the service advisor, has been crushing it with Kit's help. So the team has really come together and meshed really well, and they're using the technology really well. And, I see $1,000 ARO on the horizon for sure.
Sure. Yeah, you guys are well on your way for it. But yeah, I would celebrate all those victories. Those are some pretty massive victories. And make sure you especially you give Stephen and John some pats on the back, because they've kind of been there from the beginning with it. So
yep, absolutely.
They definitely deserve the attaboys there. What have you had going on in April that you feel like you kind of have some low-hanging fruit that you're looking to try to get a little bit more out of? Have you had some challenges? What do you have on the horizon to try to improve some things?
I think there's some opportunity for increasing our effectiveness. And we've talked about this for the last 2 months, right? Tire sales and fluid maintenance services as needed. The volume of fluid services that we're doing is really low. Low enough that it would be lower than the averages you would expect to see for our car count and the average mileage. So one of the things that you have seen with our average quote going up is our closing rate has petered down a little bit. And
Yep.
I think those two, it just kind of happens.
Sure.
But want to seek out some training from BG, is the chemical service that we use, on just how to effectively communicate the benefits of BG services when appropriate, so that we can get a little bit higher rate of adoption on those when they're recommended. And as we talked about, getting a little bit better at selling tires and finding the opportunity for tires there. I've got a message out to my sign guy on getting some flag signs and for tires and that kind of stuff to put out. I've gotten Steven's commitment that if I get a tire rack and fill it full of tires, and they'll roll it out every day and put the flags out and take them up every night. And I think as long as they are temporary signs that are moved in and out every day, the city won't get on me about signage ordinances.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So the closing percentage is one of the things that I did want to talk to you about today. And again, we've talked about this before. I'm not a firm believer in beating that number up until we have everything else kind of established and in place, and everybody's got a good habit on inspections and following the 300% rule and all that, because we can manipulate that number pretty easily to our own detriment. So, but I do think that there is some opportunity that you have left, because you have, $2,300 of discovered services per vehicle coming in is very strong. So like you said, I think the next opportunity there is trying to creep that closing percentage up to try to grab more, try to get that ADS, the ARO up to, somewhere near closer to $1,000. Where do you feel like the gap is at the moment?
I think it's confidence selling maintenance items, right?
Okay.
It's easy to sell broken stuff. It's easy to sell check engine lights and vibrations and noises. The challenge is selling the 100,000 mile service related items, that type of stuff. It's just not something that we've done a lot of.
Right.
Our maintenance to repair mix has always been skewed. So I think that's the next step in evolution. And our target right now is 40% closing rate. I think a lot of folks say that 50% should be the standard that you aim for. But I guess it depends on your average discovered services, right? If
There's a lot of factors. Your area is going to factor into that. What your price point is for the area is going to factor into that. Obviously, the skill level and at the counter, the types of jobs you're recommending. There's a lot of. That's why I don't get too terribly hyper focused on that number.
if you're like me, there's always hidden revenue in missed maintenance sales or overlooked customer concerns. Detect Auto helps auto shops unlock that revenue by analyzing vehicle service histories, pinpointing maintenance recommendations, and equipping advisors to confidently address customer questions. It's easy. It integrates with your existing software, and your team will love it. Check out detectauto.com and see how your shop can stop guessing and start selling better service recommendations today.
But you're not doing a lot of heavy drivability stuff. So you're not condemn. It's not like you have a high ADS, but you're condemning 4 engines a day that are going to have a low close ratio. So we've talked about the mix of work that you have coming in. So I feel pretty confident that we should be able to grab a little bit more of that number. And the only other thing that I see that's, I think, some fruit on the tree to be able to pull off is, and I'd like your input on what you think could be the cause of it, but your door rate I have listed at 201. Is that correct?
Technically, yes. So
Okay.
And our effective labor rate is pretty far down from that.
Yes.
And that's mostly because of things like free diag plays into that. Discount oil changes, free tire rotations and repairs, and state inspections is what drags that down a lot. And then, some of the canned jobs for maintenance items, that kind of stuff, we'll pull that down a little bit. But where's my effective labor rate on this sheet? There we go. Okay. All the way to the left. It was the last 3 weeks specifically, it's been really low.
Yep.
My target for effective labor rate is 150, 160 in that range. Yep. And so I probably need to dig into that a little bit and see why that has sunk.
Yep. So, and exactly like you said, just for the listeners out there, anytime I see that number starting to creep down, I'm trying to take a look at especially the can services, like you said, state inspections, oil changes. And I mean, your ARO says that we're doing a good job of discovering and selling, repairs off of those. But what I'm wondering is do we have a mix of heavy repairs that came in and then we lost opportunity on things like the quick services, and you have some things in there that are dragging that number down, because your repair ticket should bring that effective labor rate back up. And the only thing, obviously, the worst case scenario there is that we have my dog coming to say hello. I think the worst case scenario is that you have somebody that's discounting labor, right? And I don't think that you would have that, but
yeah, I don't think that I have that. Overall GP for the month was in TechMetric was 59.5, which is, I'd like it to be 62, but honestly, that's better than it's been in a long time.
Sure.
I don't think I have any emotional discounting at the door. I think, if anything, we had some warranty comebacks that ate into it.
Okay.
And that's one thing that you'll see on the reporting here is I don't have effective comeback tracking.
Okay.
Number of comebacks and amount. You have dollar amount. So how would let's say we put a water pump on 2 years ago. It comes back and it's leaking, so we need to replace a water pump, and we do that, and it would have been $1,600 water pump at retail. Is that a $1,600 comeback, or is it just our cost? Or if I file a labor claim and I get the part reimbursed, is it just the gap? How do you recommend I track that?
So we put it all in. This is my personal process. All of those ways that you just described are valid, and you could make a point for all three of them. I like to see it at the retail rate because I think that makes the biggest impact to the advisor. And what I mean impact is there, while the technician is in control of the quality of their work, the advisor is kind of in control of the entire process, right? So it's easy to sell, but sometimes there's an impact of selling. And not to say that we shouldn't sell a job, but we need to be careful about how we're selling, how we're estimating, what type of parts we're using. I like them to be able to see the impact of what a warranty comeback could be, because the majority of warranty comebacks are not going to be tech related if you have a good tech staff. The majority of them are going to be part related, some either not related to the job at all, and it was another component in the system, but wasn't part of the repair, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a big fan of calling them rechecks and not comebacks, because nobody gets you don't have to walk out there to the shop like that
feelings.
Hand out the comeback form to the technician, but we track it as a full retail cost. And then, like you said, if there is a labor claim attached to it, then I'm going to apply that labor claim payment to that open invoice. And that goes inside of our accounts receivable until we get the labor claim back. And that helps me track labor claim payments. And then when I close it out, with the gap as a write-off into a write-off account or a warranty account.
So then that feeds into QuickBooks, into your pro service reporting.
Yeah, and it goes into my other expenses or other income as a negative.
So in tech, so my guys are paid a percentage of gross profit, and if it closes to AR at retail, then they're going to get paid on that profit. That's not real, because you're not losing the money until you write it off.
It's going to go in but you're paying off of TechMetric. Are you paying weekly or monthly?
Weekly.
I will tell you, I do that as well, and I pay it. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I do. I'm sorry, negative. I do not pay that. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I do not pay that. I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do necessarily. I pay technician time on the ticket. You could make an argument that if we're going to pay technician time, we should pay service advisor time as well, because they are, I factor that in their job, but it does come out.
So if the recheck is a result of a technician mistake, do they get paid to do it a second time?
They do not get their production bonus, but my technicians are hourly with hybrid system, so they get their hourly pay with their production bonus. Yeah. A lot of times I will, it also may not go back to the original technician, depending on who the technician was and what the concern was, what the recheck concern was. And so if it does go to the second, then I pay the production time to the other technician.
Got it.
Because that's just.
Yeah, because you should, because they have nothing to do with the comeback. So I don't know. I feel like, a lot of times a customer perceived comeback as a result of a failure of communication on the front counter. We said, you just need this muffler slide bearing. It's going to fix your problem. And that's all you need. It's going to be $800. Oh, well, we got the muffler slide bearing in, and then we discovered that it needs this too, right? And then you got a problem, right? So they failed to communicate clearly and effectively. And, so I feel like if the store has to take a big old bite of a juicy poop sandwich as a result of that failure, I'm not sure that they should get paid a percentage of that poop sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I'm in agreement with that. I'm like I said, we're a true gross profit incentive. So if it comes out of gross profit, it comes out.
So are you paying monthly off of the P&L gross profit, or?
No, I pay weekly.
Okay.
And so what I'll do is I'll go through and do a warranty payments. So that's one of my payment methods is warranty, and we'll subtract out warranty payments.
That makes sense. Okay. It's not too hard. It's not cumbersome to track that.
No.
Okay. If you have Miss Jones comes back in for her regular service, and we did her water pump 2 years ago, and we find that her water pump is leaking again, and she needs brakes and tires, and she says, go ahead and take care of the brakes and tires. Oh, by the way, we're going to give you a new water pump because it's still under warranty, whatever. Is that one ticket, or do you break the water pump up on a separate ticket from the brakes and the tires?
Separate ticket. Yep. And that, I mean, that will affect, some of your micro numbers there, like your car count, your ARO, and all of those kind of things.
Yeah. I'm not super worried about that.
If it's affecting that, you got big problems.
Yeah.
Right. And you would rather fix your big problems that you have with comebacks
Yeah.
than worry about it dragging down some of the other numbers. So I mean, there's no easy way to do it. There's no painless way to do it. Let me rephrase that. There's some easy ways to do it, but there's no painless way. But you have to know what that is. We don't have a huge problem with comebacks, so it's not something that's very painful to do.
Oh, the fix for that is just don't have any comebacks. Just fix it right the first time.
Change it. You can always pull the dealership vocabulary and just leave yourself a loophole for everything, and then nothing is a comeback. Well,
thanks for
Mike,
assigning
we're going to have to
dealerships.
We're going to have to start with tires today.
To determine where your coolant leak is coming from, we're going to have to do tires and brakes.
Yes. And then from there, we'll have to retest and check and see.
Yeah.
But no, I think I would look into that though, because you're 100% right. Just getting back to the effective hourly rate conversation we were having. If you are having free labor tickets, off of warranty services, that can definitely impact that. And that's a pretty big drop from 201 to 126. So I would just make sure we don't have a bunch of push cars. Push cars to me would be how many diag tickets are you doing for the 1 hour free diag, and that we're not selling off of. I would want to know that. I would want to know, what our warranty rate is at the moment, and then, making sure that our can package pricing is not ridiculously low. Your car count's not super duper high. So I don't think you have and your ARO is strong enough that I don't think that you have a big issue with inspection, a lot of state inspection only tickets. But as well as I do, that's
they did
those are
54 state inspections last month. So
you did what now?
54. So they did 2 a day.
Oh,
2.5 a
yeah,
day.
you're good.
Yeah.
But those are usually the first few places that I'm looking at when effective labor rate's really low. How many state inspection only tickets are we doing? Doing some can service audits just to make sure that we're not doing $10 an hour oil changes. And then looking at warranty rate, and then, like I said, push cars, especially with what your diag rate strategy is.
So I forgot about this. I also pay the guys to do their own DVIs over there.
Okay.
And so I'm just looking at my sales by job category report in TechMetric. So DVIs paid out a bunch of hours at no income. Diag paid out a fair amount of hours at no income. State inspections, 54 of them, almost 100 oil changes. So that's low labor. Tire services. Yeah, there's a fair amount of bleed there, but I need to see if there's other stuff that should be going out at a good effective labor rate that's not. And
so are you guys flat rate or hybrid?
Everybody, 2 guys are flat rate with a minimum guarantee, and 1 guy is salary with bonus.
Okay. Not telling you have to do this. I would think about doing this. And this is something that you would have to go back and get some buy-in with the team on, and maybe roll it out slowly, and just let them know that you're going to check the math to make sure that it's not affecting what their production hours is or production pay is. But I've helped other clients, and we've actually done it at my store as well, where we've increased the labor multiplier just a little bit, and then went to the commodity services where we have a reduced labor rate. And we're like, our effective labor rate on an oil change might be $40 an hour, and I'm paying a technician, 0.75 to do an oil change and a DVI, right? Well, that's a horrible effective labor rate, right?
Yeah.
And so what we've done is we've reduced that down, to something that's very nominal. And so they're not getting a large production bonus off of that oil change, but I'm making up for it with the labor multiplier inside of repair tickets. So when we sell repairs, and when they're doing repair work, they're getting that absorbed into the repair tickets.
I think the multiplier increase just has to be enough to offset whatever they're going to lose, right?
Yep.
So if I did 100 oil changes last month and I paid a half hour for each one, and we did 200 DVIs last month and I paid a half hour for each one of those are not the actual numbers I pay.
Yep.
But if I cut those in half, but then I went from a 10% labor bump to a 20% labor bump on anything that you have to look up the labor time on. Because if you're looking up the labor time, that's very high effective labor rate stuff.
Yep.
So we're shortening the time on the low labor rate stuff, and we're increasing the time on the high labor rate stuff. And the net effect is a significant gain in effective labor rate without punishing the technicians.
Yes.
Right.
And it's a huge net gain of labor profit.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And again, the big thing there is making sure that, because this is going to, the flat rate mentality on the technician side, it is there no matter what the pay scale is. They still, they still relate everything back to the book says I should get paid this. And so it's going to take a little bit of education and a request of a little bit of trust there to say, hey, listen, if for whatever reason this is impacting your average hourly performance, we're gonna adjust accordingly until we hit the sweet spot of this being correct. The intent is not to take hours away from the technician. The intent is to change the hours from low labor charge services to higher labor charge services. It's just changing how you get paid. It shouldn't change how they get paid.
Well, I think the way to do it is take it even a step further, is just analyze the previous 3 months and say, here's how many oil changes you did and how many DVIs you did and whatever jobs you're going to shorten. And here's how much you were paid. And if you were paid this much less, it would have cost you this many hours. Well, here's all the high ELR jobs you did. And if I had added 10% to the time on all those, that's how many hours you would have gained.
Yes.
So the net effect for you would be a gain of X. And that's not just this month or last month. Here's the number for the last 3 months. I promise you this isn't going to hurt you. And if it does, bring it to me and I'll fix it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, as the selling gets better, it will actually be a net gain for them.
Yeah.
It'll be a net gain because they'll be getting more per billed hour. It won't be 1-to-1 anymore. It'll be 1 to 1.3 or 1 to 1 point, whatever you pick it to be. So the efficiency picks up, the productivity picks up, the effective labor rate picks up. It winds up being a net gain across the board.
What are you seeing as kind of an average across all of your clients or across Elite's clients for how much of a labor multiplier they're putting in place? And I know that y'all have got tire dealers and Euro guys and giant shops and tiny shops and everything else.
It varies. My personal opinion is I try to get people at a minimum of 1.2. I'm not saying that's where everybody's at. This is a very touchy subject with a lot of people because there's a lot of people that feel that it's unethical to do. My rebuttal to them is, if it's so unethical, why are so many shops under 100% productivity? Right. And I know that there are some poorly run shops from an efficiency standpoint, and I get that. And I'm not trying to pass the cost of the inefficiency onto the customer. At the same time, though, the repair times, the repair manual has not been friendly to repair shops over the last 10 years. It's, the repairs, simple repairs are becoming more complex, and they're not being reflected into labor guides. We do a moderate amount of extended warranty work, and extended warranty companies are going to go 110% by whatever the exact book time is. Mm-hmm. So they hit us for a transmission the other day for 8 hours, which was fine. But they would not add any more time in for the programming because it wasn't specified in the R&R procedure that there was a separate time to program the transmission. So it must have been incorporated into the 8 hours, which you know as well as I do, that's not possible, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to go, if you think about everything that it goes in to do a job like a transmission service, after the service, hopefully we're going to go test drive that vehicle, which is an unbillable time. I dare a lot of people to go put test drive labor on your ticket and see what I mean, there's people out there that do it. And if you can get away with it and not get yelled at, by all means do it. But I want you to get paid for those things. But strategically speaking, you may not be able to have a breakout of a separate labor line. There's a lot of labor loss in our process sometimes, I guess is what I'm getting at. So,
for sure.
If you want your technician to look up the repair procedure, he should, right? But that's part of the time. By the time he gets the keys, pulls it in the bay, goes over there, types it into Identifix or All Data, looks at the repair procedure for the service. That's not built into the 6-hour job, but he still has to do that. So I am a big believer in the labor multiplier, especially if you're in an area where excessive rust, vehicle condition. I mean, the cars are getting older now. I mean, we went from having 8-9-year-old cars a couple of years ago. We're all the way up to almost 13-year-old cars now. So the condition of the vehicles that we're working on is lower. They've been touched a lot more times before we get them. So there's a lot more problems engineered into a general repair. So I'm more of a believer in 1.2 or above. And I think the above is going to be how old is your average vehicle? What is the condition of those vehicles? What is the size of the vehicle? Right. So if we're working on a lot of bigger SUVs, bigger trucks, the parts are heavier. It's typically a little bit slower, it takes longer to rack them, takes longer to do a little, all of those types of things.
Yeah. All the reasons. And the labor guide is a guide, and
it's not the Bible.
Was built in a clean shop with a clean, brand new vehicle. We all know the reasons. So
yeah.
I don't even remember what our bump is. I'm looking it up right now. Markups, labor matrix, labor guide. Yeah, we're at 25. So
okay. So do the math, see if it makes sense to to be able to up that a little bit more. I know you're rolling your eyes that 0.25 is already pretty good. And I'm not saying that it's not. Again, I'm not scared of a 0.35 bump on it, but
I'm not in as affluent an area as you, man. You're surrounded by very wealthy people.
Yeah.
Those that don't know, it's the exact opposite of that.
You make me chuckle, Mike. Yes, I mean, I know if I can get away with it where I'm at, I don't think you would have an issue there. It just doesn't affect it as much as we think it's going to. I can tell you, it does have a big difference in the profitability numbers. And again, it made a huge difference. It did not have any effect on our technician productive pay.
So pushing the effective labor rate to 150 to get it to 75% of our posted rate, I think is a reasonable goal.
Yep. And again, I'm not saying that the labor guide is all that. So, I mean, I wouldn't go and hero that number too far, but I think you can stand a little bit of a nudge there. And then
you can go pull your labor detail report and export it to Excel, and then you can just do the math real quick on effective labor rate by job and sort the column and find out what jobs you're losing effective labor rate on.
And then you're going to find it's going to be a combination, taking a look at things like your alignments and can we stretch another $10 or $15 on an alignment? Can we stretch another $5 here or there on on an oil change service, a brake fluid service? Just making sure. I mean, you have to be competitive on the commodity services, and I want you to be strongly competitive on the commodity services. Just make sure you're not giving it all away in those. And then whatever we're losing there, try to blend some of that gap back into the general repair stuff.
Copy. Just trying to see the best way to pull the labor detail out of TechMetric. And I think it's sales by job category. So, okay. If anybody who's listening knows a better way to get the labor detail report out of TechMetric, send me a message. 704 confess. Leave me a voicemail.
All right. So we know we're going to work on trying to get the effective labor rate closer to 150. We're going to work on trying to get the closing percentage up to 40% as a standard. We identified that a portion of the issue is just some training and confidence on the preventative maintenance services and being able to sell those. Do you guys have a benefits list for the preventative maintenance services?
No. And the advisors at that location have not been to any of the elite advisor training or the master's program or anything. So, they definitely could benefit from that.
So one thing I would recommend right out of the gate is Salesmaster University. It's built into your enrollment. So there's no extra. I'm a big believer in you getting all the free stuff you can get first before you go pay for the additional things.
Okay.
So I would love to. That's going to be an online self-paced learning platform for your service advisors. It's a great onboarding tool for new service advisors if you're bringing on new advisors. 16 different modules. They can do it at their own pace. So I've had advisors that can breeze through it in a couple days, and I've had other advisors that it takes a couple weeks for them to get it done. I usually try to give some sort of a completion incentive bonus for them to be able to do it, but that does typically help. But the other thing is just
that Sales Masters University comes automatically with my coaching agreement with you guys, right?
It does. Yep. That's part of your coaching agreement.
There's some really great phone skills training on there as well.
The phone skills training is incredible. There is your client portal is going to give you access to turn your phone into a gold mine, and then a in-depth phone skills training 4-part series. Both of those are great classes. And again, I'm Bob Cooper, who is the founder of Elite. He's got an audio recording on there about selling maintenance.
Yeah, and it's like 40 minutes long, and it's audio only, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Yes. And if you guys out there are not familiar with Bob Cooper, I thought at one point in time I was a fairly decent salesperson until I listened to Bob Cooper's Overcoming Objections audio file, and I realized how inadequate I was. But it's great content. He does an incredible job of not just explaining how to sell, but how to sell ethically and the ethical reasons to sell. Jerry Vicario, who is one of our pro service members, who I'm sure you've met at some point in time. He was at our last Eagles event and took us out to dinner, but he brought up a really good point. He goes, a long time ago when I first started as a business owner, I thought that I was helping people out by, omitting certain things.
Yeah.
Right. Or trying to do a cheaper side of the repair, even though I knew the best repair was this way, but I knew that they were struggling with money. But he said he had a really passionate story where he had a young kid that came into his store, had a coolant leak. It was coming from the coolant hose where the end of the coolant hose was dry rotted. He knew the kid didn't have a lot of money. So he cut the hose and, cut the dry rotted part off and then put it back on and, clamped it back and sent him on his way. And then a couple days later, the hose failed completely, lost all the coolant and the engine was blown and the guy didn't have a car. Right. And he goes, it bothered him as a person that he put that kid in that predicament to save him a $500 repair or a $300 repair or a $200 repair, whatever it was. And it wound up costing the kid, a $5,000 car, you know? And so I think that if you listen to any of the stuff that Elite teaches, from a sales standpoint, that's where the ethical obligation to sell really comes in, because the bottom line is you're not selling people stuff that they don't need. The car is broken. It needs to be fixed. It's our job to try to help them understand the value of getting it fixed versus allowing them to make an emotional decision that costs them a lot more money down the road. So,
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, all of those sales tools are great things. They're completely complementary inside of your deal. I would start there. I think what you can do inside of this from an actions side of things is in your canned job services for these things, create the benefits list and the why statement. So the benefits of getting the service, coolant service done. What are the risks of not getting a coolant service done? And then asking the service advisors to read that out prior to. And then I'm assuming I know you mentioned BG.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think is easier, and this is 100% up to you as far as how you want to do this, but I found it really difficult for advisors to understand all of the mileage intervals that are out there for all of the vehicles. So we created our own based off of the BG platform.
Mm-hmm.
But
we've done something similar. We're just not following it very effectively.
Right.
So,
and then I think bringing the BG rep in would be really good, letting them know that, hey, the vehicles that come in that are under 70,000 miles, they're part of the lifetime protection plan. If we get them, if we get a service done and we explain the intervals to the customer. And then the best way to do that, you can go ahead and pre-schedule those appointments. That's another great pre-scheduling tool. So I'm a big believer in that. I think the other thing that I would do is ask your service advisors what they think they're getting the most declines on. But I would really look into the diag only tickets. I would be really interested to know.
Okay, you can do that.
Because that's going to affect that effective labor rate and the closing percentage the same.
Yeah.
Because you're giving that ticket away at no charge.
The diag only ticket is typically a really big estimate that, like, we totaled a car and they shipped it or something, so that has a major effect on both of them. Should be able to find that out today. So,
yep, I would look into those. See how many. Because if I understand your diagnostic strategy. I would just want to know what the mix of that is, because if we're getting a lot of push cars off of that, then there's no benefit to the business and it's just clogging up the works.
Copy. Well, it looks like there was 74 diagnostic tickets that contained diagnostics last month. Take me a little bit more to dig in and see how many of them were 0 tickets on the way out. But you can get that information pretty quick.
Okay. And then I guess the last thing to talk about today that we haven't already talked about is because you guys got things going in a really, really good direction. What is the client retention plan that you have at this location?
So they get a satisfaction text and email the day after the ticket is closed, and then they go into the retention funnel for comms via text and email through Shop Genie. I don't have any targeted direct mail. All my direct mail is Every Door Direct. Actually, that store doesn't do any Every Door Direct because they've got so much traffic as it is. If we look back at the performance report on the new customer count, it was pretty high last month. It was, over 30% of customers were new customers last month. It's good because we were growing, and it had to be a big number because we were selling so much more than we were used to selling. But if that maintains for long, that means we're churning. We're having a lot of one and dones.
Yep.
So
and I feel like that number is probably going to be higher than some of your other stores just because of the demographic makeup, that it's college students and they're turning over. You're at least losing some of them every year.
Yeah.
So, but we'd still like to capture them for 4 years for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's be honest. It's 5.5 at NC State.
You got to factor in the ag program. That's like 1.5 to 2 years. That brings the average back down.
I love you, Wolfpack.
Okay. So we're not doing thank you cards, not doing nothing along those lines.
They're all things that we have done in the past and that we should do.
Okay.
Just kind of let them go by the wayside. My wife used to do a handwritten thank you note for anybody who spent over our average repair order every week, and then go mail. Yep. I would take them to the shop on Monday, and the guys would sign them and, put them in the mail. That just fell by the wayside last year. We can pick it up again.
Are we scheduling next appointments?
No.
Okay. So I would think about both of those things. Maybe not worry about customers over a certain dollar spend, and I get what you're saying there, but maybe a new customer, letter that goes out with a thank you for whatever their service was, and then some sort of service declaration in there, letting them know that you guys do things like tires and brakes and all of the things, right? And then also letting them know that if they ever have any type of issue, to come back to you, directly. And then inside of TechMetric, I would love to see you start scheduling next appointments. I'll give you a couple different things to think about with scheduling the next appointment. If you start doing packages for your oil change, where it's an oil change plus a pit stop in between, you're essentially getting two services off of every oil change. The customer benefit behind the pit stop is, the oil change intervals are now 10,000 miles. Customer goes a year without changing the oil. The oil and filter and everything are fine, other than the fact that we're blowing oil through the tailpipe for that entire year. And if you ask your technicians, the dipstick's going to be low on most of the vehicles that come in. So the pit stop is a complimentary service that comes with every oil change, that they get to come back in between their interval cycle, and you get another opportunity at discovery. So you're going to do your 15-minute quick check. You're not going to do your full 40-minute safety maintenance inspection, but you can do a fluid top off, and you're going to catch some of the small wear components, tie rod ends, tires, wiper blades, some of those kind of things. The reason I say that it's a decent idea to start with that, because you get better buy-in from the advisor, because they feel like they have something to sell to the customer for coming back in. That makes sense. They have a reason to schedule the next appointment, versus for whatever reason we have a huge opposition to just scheduling the next appointment that we've already put on their windshield.
Well, the word track that I'd like to try with first-time customers is something to the effect of, "Hey, Miss Jones, thank you so much for coming in and trusting us with your vehicle. Here's the deal. My job is to be your car guy. Anything to do with your car that gives you stress, I want you to think I'm going to call Mike. because that's, even if it's not something that I can help you with, I can point you in the right direction.
Yep.
And one of the things that we do is, I know that it's hard to remember about maintenance. I've just set a reminder in my computer, and I'm going to call you in about 6 months to remind you that you're due for your oil change, and then we can get it in if it's needed at that point. So it's very soft sell. This is just a reminder. I'll call you. You don't have to do anything. And if you need it, great. If you don't, okay. Because I've found that the few times that I've failed to launch and booking the next appointment, it's because I get pushback from customers, and we're all gun shy when we get pushback, right?
Yep.
So I'm not even asking permission or anything else. I'm just telling them, part of my job is to stay on top of your maintenance. I'm just going to call you and remind you when you're due for your oil change.
That's exactly
or for your
right.
state inspection. So, that's something that I learned down in Houston last year is, book the next appointment for the oil change, but also book the next appointment for the state inspection. And if you're doing BG services and you know how many miles they're averaging, book the next appointment for the next transmission service or for the next, brake fluid service or whatever it might be, because it's just a reminder call, and then in 6 months, it's, hey, Ms. Jones, it's been 6 months. I promised you that I was going to call you. I don't want to be a liar, Yeah, I think you're probably due for your oil change. I can do it for you today, or do you want to get on the books and do it later this week?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it seems easy, but getting it implemented sometimes can be more challenging.
And it takes some time, because these are seeds that you're going to plant today that they're not going to see the benefits from until 6 months from now or 3 months from now.
If they call and remind them in 6 months.
And so it will take a lot of management effort on your end. The easiest way to see that they're doing that, Mike, is to go into your TechMetric scheduler, the appointments app, and change it to the month view. So what we did in our store is you can change the colors. So our color is green for a next scheduled service, meaning that we scheduled that manually at your previous visit. And I take a look at the next, the months in the future, and I'm counting how many greens I see on there. And I know how many cars we've done in that 6 month prior to cycle. So I can see, how much of my car count we're actually adding to the schedule.
So how many cars did you service in April, and how many appointments do you have on the books for October?
So I try to do every 90 days.
Oh, okay. Wow.
As a pre-schedule. And again, that's not necessarily for the oil change. That's in between services, right? So you got the oil change, the 90-day checkup, the oil change, 90-day checkup, right?
Okay.
So I can tell you, we average between 200 and 300 cars a month, depending on the time of year. And in April, let me see what I got for May. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
14, 15, 27.
I've got 97 pre-scheduled appointments for May.
So how many of those do you think will come in? 75?
I would say we're probably about 80% on that.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
And so what we'll do is when we do the call in, now that may reschedule, right? They may not come in on that day, but we're going to get them in that month. Yeah. I can tell you we've had a huge increase in car count, and not all of it's been new customers, if that makes sense. When we started doing this. So, and Joe Marconi is the one that talked me into doing it. So what our physical process is again, we when we schedule it in the system, it gets scheduled and listed as the color green. And then after they do the call, so they'll call this week for next week's appointments and do the check-in. Like you said, hey, we're going to call a week before just to check in with you. After they've confirmed it, it changes the color to peachy, whatever the other color is, a peach color.
I'm going to go with fuchsia.
And that's a confirmed, that is a confirmed appointment. And so, I can kind of see how we're doing there, but I can look months ahead and see how we're doing. And what you're going to see is, like you said, so I've got 30 or more appointments scheduled out all the way into October. When I start getting to November, I'm a little light. But what a huge difference that makes now. I mean, your slow times of the year, November, December, January. So we started this in June, July of last year. So, you didn't get the first benefit from it until December to January. But it took a lot of pushing on the front end to try to get it, because again, it's not an immediate return from the advisor standpoint, and they do get pushback, right? It's not a fun conversation to have, really.
Depends on how you cast it, right?
But
are you being helpful or are you being pushy?
But once they started seeing people come back in and they're like, oh, we're not getting, nobody punched me when I asked, when I told them I was going to pre-schedule their appointment.
Like, we're always riding the high in June, July, and August, right? Because we're just, raking it in as fast as we can. But that's the time to plant the seed so that you can harvest in February, in January,
And again, if you're splitting it up, every 90 days, you're getting that same bump in December. And the return on it's going to be lower in those months, right? But
yeah.
My goal is kind of what I tried to focus on the last year is how do I can't necessarily affect available income from my customer base, right? So my ARO might fluctuate, my closing percentage might fluctuate, but I want to do everything that I can do to make sure that my car count is as flat as possible, right? That I'm always, because if I have cars and I have opportunity, if my discovered services are flat, if my car count is flat, and I'm providing a good experience, my client may not have available income today to say yes, but they will eventually, and that's going to come back to me, right? So I'm always growing my potential sales as long as I'm doing that. But one of the challenges that we all have is we have certain times of the year where car count is more of a struggle.
Yeah.
And this was one of the ways that we implemented to try to flatten that out.
Well, good. Hang on one second. Yes, child? I'm recording an episode, yeah. Everybody wave at Jackson. He's leaving. I'll come find you in a little bit. Just came in from playing basketball in the driveway. He's all sweaty. So.
All right. So we've got, just to give a quick recap, we're going to work on getting the effective labor rate up to 150. We've got a couple that we're going to pull diag-only tickets out and do an audit on diag-only tickets to see how many of those that we have. We're going to take a look at our canned services and check the effective labor rate on the canned services just to see if there's any adjustments that we can do there. We're going to tinker with the idea of adjusting the labor multiplier or the markup, and then maybe offsetting that with some of the commodity service labor times that we're paying out currently. If we do that, we're going to have a really good conversation with the team before we roll it out so they understand what we're doing and why. We've got the flags coming in that we talked about at the last meeting to get some of our tire sales up. And we're going to try to work on the walk around process to try to improve some of those pre-discovery items.
I'm making all these notes in our performance report. I added a tab to the performance report so that it's all there for reference. Good. I think that's, man, if I get half of that to-do list done, that'll be pretty powerful. So, and
then Sales Master University, get John, and you have a second advisor at the counter now as well?
Yep.
Okay.
He bounces back and forth between the Raleigh stores where he's needed, but his primary home base is the Hillsborough Street store.
Okay. So get both of them set up on the BG training and Sales Master University and see if we can help them out. I would also recommend that, like I said, that Bob Cooper Selling Maintenance, it's an audio file, but if I'm assuming they have some version of a commute there in the Garner area. That is a great audio file to listen to as far as the reasons for selling maintenance and why it's important. But I would get them to listen to that and see if we can bump up those things a little bit as well. Great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
You've given me a lot to do. Hopefully I pull off some of it. I appreciate you.
1% better every day is better than nothing.
Yeah, true story. I'm going to go for 0.1% better each day.
There you go.
And then I'll be 3 times as good after the year. I don't know, whatever. I'll talk to you later.
I mean, I will say though, this, like I said, this is a pat on the back episode. You've been, I know we normally give you a hard time, but you guys have.
Anything that's gone poorly is Steven's fault. Anything that's gone well,
Steven, you've done a great job. You get toppings on your pizza.
All right, man. I'll talk to you next time.
All right.